Homes in Kansas City are still selling super fast, but there are 7 areas in Kansas City where you might want to avoid buying a home. If you watch until the very end of this video, I'm going to tell you how you can avoid losing a lot of money if you do decide to buy a home in one of these areas. Numbers 4 and 2 particularly shocked me. I think they'll shock you. And if you stick around for number 1, this area in Kansas City, the average home price there dropped 15% from 2023 to 2024. Number 1 area is Independence, Missouri. The average price point of homes in Independence dropped just a little bit from 2023 to 2024. It held almost the same, but whenever you hold pretty much the same, you're actually losing money because of inflation and because the rest of the housing market around you is simply growing all the time. Here's something interesting to note about Independence. Members of the LDS Church and the Community of Christ Church flock to Independence because this is the site of future Zion for them. A lot of people believe that Jesus Christ is going to establish Zion right in Independence, Missouri, very near that eye-catching temple that's kind of shaped like a spire right in the middle of Independence. So I've personally had 4 to 6 clients in the past 2 years call me from Utah, finding these videos just like you're watching right now, wanting to move closer to Independence or the surrounding areas. I've put families in Grain Valley, Oak Grove, Independence itself, Lee Summit, all from Utah because they want to be close to this particular area. Now, speaking of the location of Independence, let's turn to a map and see where Independence is. So as you can see, Independence is a huge area, especially from east to west. It's also pretty long from north to south as well, but this is a giant area. And one of the things to know about Independence is the closer you get to the city right here, the more crime, the more areas that are going to be undesirable you're going to run into, okay? Once you get closer to Sugar Creek, Blue Summit, this type of area, you can see right here is the stadiums. So that's Arrowhead Stadium and also Kauffman Stadium, where the Chiefs and the Royals play. And the rest of Independence, especially once you get out here past the 291, is going to be particularly rural. So the average price point of homes in this area has dropped extremely slightly from $201,666 to only $201,281,000. That's a 2023 to 2024 comparison in the same time period. Another thing to note about Independence is that it is also the home of the Harry S. Truman Presidential Library. We haven't been there yet. Our kids are a little bit too young. However, it is something that I know is historically significant and actually apparently a ton of fun too, based on other families who have visited that area before. So why the decline, or why did Independence not really grow at all? When we first got to Independence, I got to tell you a quick story. When we first got to Independence, my wife started working at a hospital called Research Medical Center that's not too far from where we live right now. And she told a couple of people about the fact that she was driving out in Independence because she picked up something on Facebook Marketplace. And they immediately turned to her and said, look, Independence is the armpit of Kansas City. Now, I've been to Independence before, and again, I've helped multiple clients move into Independence, and I can tell you that that is equivocally not true. There are a lot of areas in Independence, especially, like I said before, once you get outside the 291, that are going to be beautiful rural areas that you are going to have to pay over asking price to get your home. Remember, just because an area went down, the average price point of an area went down, does not mean that you can't still find a great home there that will appreciate year over year. And that's why you have to call us. If you're thinking about moving to Kansas City, especially if you're thinking about buying a home in Kansas City in 2024, we have all the statistics of the market to make sure that you don't get into an area where you're going to lose a ton of money on your home. We will tailor make a presentation and talk about all these different areas for you. 816-4MOVE-KC, 816-4MOVE-KC. We have tons of people reaching out all the time, and we love hearing from you, especially if you've been listening to this channel or watching this channel for a very long time. 816-4MOVE-KC, call, text, or email. We promise we will get back to you promptly. Now, before we move to area number 6, I'm going to tell you how I made this list. The way that you compare real estate is you compare a certain time period in the year before to the certain time period of this year. So for this case, I took the first 3 months of 2023, averaged out all the home prices in the entire Kansas City metro, put them in different buckets, and got an average price point for each area for the first 3 months of 2023. That's January, February, and March 2023. Then I took the same data from January, February, and March of 2024, and I compared them. So these are average price points. Again, sometimes you can find homes for above the average, sometimes you can find homes for below the average. But a lot of these areas I'm particularly shocked by because these are super desirable areas in the Kansas City metro, and they've actually lost quite a significant amount compared from 2023 to 2024. However, that means that you can't find a particular home in these areas where you could get appreciation year over year. Again, this is why you're going to have to call us and we're going to have to talk about the local market. Okay, the number 6 area to avoid buying a home in Kansas City is a surprising one too, Liberty, Missouri. Liberty is known as an area that is growing rapidly. It's an amazing place to live, close to shopping, close to the downtown part of Kansas City. It's got awesome school districts, so a lot of families want to move there. However, the average price point of Liberty has declined from 2023 to 2024. 2.5% it went down, okay? And it's not like the rest of the Kansas City metro has gone down. In fact, the rest of the Kansas City metro has climbed year over year, but Liberty has not in terms of average home price. I have a theory of why Liberty has declined, and it's this. I believe that there are a lot of people leaving Liberty because Liberty was once a city that was known for its small town charm, but still close to the metro. It no longer feels like a small town anymore. If you go to the Liberty Triangle, it is jammed packed with people basically throughout the whole weekend. It is insanely packed and insanely hard to get around in Liberty. The traffic there has gotten worse, especially along the 152 and right around what I just said, the Liberty Triangle. Let me tell you a story about a home that I showed a buyer in Liberty. We didn't end up buying this home, but the seller was actually there when we went into the showing. And he was a grumpy, kind of old man, rough around the edges. He was wearing suspenders. I think his name was Paul. He had lived in Liberty his whole life, raised his family there, and he was living in a split-level home in which he could not really be mobile around his home anymore because he couldn't do stairs. He had hip issues or foot issues. I don't exactly remember which. So he was selling. And when we first came in, he greeted us roughly. He made it very clear that he didn't like the fact that we were there. And afterwards, I ended up getting into a conversation with him. And we ended up talking for quite a while. And he said, I've grown up in Liberty my whole life. I've lived here my whole life. I've seen it change, and I don't like the change. Liberty used to be country living in the city. Liberty used to be a small town, but it is no longer a small town. There are people coming in here, bidding our houses up to way higher prices than we could ever expect to pay, and now we're kind of out. And I think he was bitter. I mean, I know his house sold for quite a bit of money, but I think he was bitter because he had to move from a place where he raised his kids, where he knew all his life, and he was going to somewhere new. Change is scary for a lot of people, but I would say that that gentleman's case is happening all around Liberty. A lot of people moved to Liberty when it was a small town, and they're saying, look, it's not a small town anymore because the areas around Liberty have completely exploded. Kearney is up 22% year over year. Smithville is up 20% year over year. It is crazy. People are moving out of Liberty, going to these areas where they can still actually have small town living, but still close to a city. So again, just because it shows up on this list does not, I repeat, does not mean that it is a bad area to live. In fact, Liberty is probably one of the top 10 areas to live in the Kansas City metro. However, it's just that the home prices are decreasing year over year. We're just looking at the numbers. So let's move to number 5, and that's an area right near Liberty, and that is Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Excelsior Springs, Missouri. It is in the northeast quadrant of the metro. So I'm going to show you this on a map right now. So let's look at Excelsior Springs on the map. Here we have Liberty selected. It is this area right here. And Liberty actually goes all the way out here sometimes too. So you can find some Liberty addresses out here. Excelsior Springs is way out here. And the reason I think Excelsior Springs has declined while Kearney has boomed is because I think the 35 is a much easier drive than this freeway right here, the 69. It is a lot harder to get out to Excelsior Springs. It's not hard by any means, but it's harder than to get out to Kearney. 35 is a pretty wide highway that you can use to get out there. But Excelsior Springs is a little bit of a different story. it still feels like a very, very small town. Now, it doesn't necessarily have as much small town charm as a Kearney or Liberty, and that's just my own opinion. I know a lot of people love Excelsior Springs. I've been downtown Excelsior Springs to the Hall of Waters, and there's a lot of cool things there, but it just kind of feels a little bit dead every time that you go out there. Average home prices went down from $241,000 to about $234,000, which is a decrease of about 3% in Excelsior Springs. Now, one thing that the locals will tell you about Excelsior Springs is that Excelsior Springs has been kind of known to be an area that has high drug traffic. I've never experienced anything like this myself. I'm just passing along what somebody has told me. Another thing that somebody has told me about Excelsior Springs is I had a woman who decided to buy a home cash in Excelsior Springs. It was a $100,000 home, okay? She decided to live there, and she just said, look, it might have been the particular block that I moved in Excelsior Springs, but everybody was not welcoming there. It didn't have the typical hometown charm, the Midwest feel that the rest of the Kansas City Metro has. And that was just her experience. So I'm not saying I've met plenty of nice people in Excelsior Springs, but I'm just relaying a story that my client told me. But home prices have gone down there 3% from 2023 to 2024. And so you might want to think twice in buying a home in Excelsior Springs in case that trend continues throughout the years, especially if you do buy a home and you can't stay there for a long time to realize the appreciation. You're going to be in trouble if you have to sell very quickly. Another reason I think that Excelsior Springs is not going up in value is because the people who are leaving Liberty are not going to Excelsior Springs. They are going to Kearney. They are going to Smithville. They are going to other parts of the Kansas City Metro that are not Excelsior Springs. So that's going to be one thing that you want to think twice about when you buy a home in Excelsior Springs. Excelsior Springs also, by comparison, does not have the best school system. While Liberty and Kearney have complete A+, knock it out of the park school systems, Excelsior Springs does not necessarily have the school systems that would compare to those areas that are right next to them. So if you're going to move to the northeast quadrant of Kansas City, if you're going to move up here, then you're not going to choose Excelsior Springs very naturally. Excelsior Springs is also known by the locals as a more touristy place. It is home to the Elms Hotel, which is actually a very historically significant hotel. We're not going to get into that right now, but it is an extremely historically significant hotel to the United States. I think President Truman actually was staying there when he found out that he won the presidency. However, that's not necessarily going to drive up home prices. Historic areas are not necessarily going to mean that people are going to pay more for homes in that area. But while Excelsior Springs is a little bit farther from downtown, this next area completely shocked me when I saw it on the list, and it's our first entry on the Kansas side, and that is Prairie Village, Kansas. The reason I'm shocked about Prairie Village is because Prairie Village was Zillow's most popular market in 2022, which was only 2 years ago. It was 2 years ago that everybody wanted to move to Prairie Village. Everybody was flocking there. However, the following 2 years haven't been as kind to the Prairie Village market. Sure, prices are still high, way higher than the average price in the Kansas City Metro. And it is still an awesome place to live, very trendy, very beautiful, a lot of manicured parks, a lot of wonderful homes, and a great school system. However, from 2023 to 2024, the average price of a home in Prairie Village dropped from $616,000 all the way down to $587,000. And that's almost a 5% decrease, 4.73% to be exact. That's a pretty big decrease. Now, let me put this into context for you. If you were to buy the average home in Prairie Village in 2023 and you were to pay the $616,000, and then for some reason you got your dream job offer and you had to move in 2024, you would lose $30,000 for the home just because the prices have shifted, but you're also going to be losing out on the fees that it costs to sell your house. I would say estimate you're going to be in the hole at least $50,000 when all is said and done. $50,000 when all is said and done just for buying a home in the wrong area. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't buy a great home in Prairie Village and you can't have a great asset that is going to give you a lot of money when you go and sell it a few years down the line. What I'm saying is that the reason you might want to think about avoiding buying homes in this area is especially if you don't know that you're going to be here for a long time. If you think that you're going to move within the next 2 to 3 years, you might lose value on your Prairie Village home, especially if you bought in Prairie Village when it was like the peak of the market, then you may lose some money when you go and sell your home. And I don't want that for you. That's why you got to give us a call. That's why we got to sort out all of these different areas for you, and we can tailor make an area for you that will not lose value, where the appreciation will be strong. Let me tell you one thing about Prairie Village is that if we had to move to Kansas City all over again from California, then we would have definitely looked very long and very hard in Prairie Village. The reason that we didn't was because we were told by somebody, I don't remember who told us this, but we were told by somebody, you don't want to live on the Kansas side. They're like, don't even think about the Kansas side. And you know what? That was definitely a big mistake, because in the Kansas side, you have a lot of these beautiful areas that would have held their value probably really well, like Overland Park, like Lenexa, like Leawood, like Merriam, like Prairie Village, and we would have loved living in Prairie Village. We didn't do that, and that's our mistake. We still moved into our home in Gladstone, and Gladstone is not on this list, but coming up in this video a little bit. So we did not look in the Kansas side at all, and we bought a home in the Missouri side. Totally okay. Speaking of the Missouri side, let's move on to the next area here. And this is the number 3 area where you may want to avoid buying a home in Kansas City, and that is Raymore. Raymore is kind of an area that I really don't hear too many people talking about. Let's look at where Raymore is on a map. Raymore is pretty far away from the center of the Kansas City metro. So you can see that it is right on the outskirts of the metro, right next to Belton, Grandview, and Lake Winnebago. And I think one of the reasons that people don't want to live in Raymore is that it's actually a really nice area. There are a lot of high price point homes in that area. So for example, let me give you the average here. The average price point home in Raymore is right about $373,000 right now. That's a little bit higher than the average in the entire Kansas City metro. But last year, that 373 dropped down from 405,000. That's a decrease of almost 8%. Here's the reason I think a lot of people don't want to move to Raymore. I actually recently had a client who was looking long and hard at homes in Raymore. They were contemplating a home particularly in Raymore. That is when a very similar home popped up in Lee Summit, and they just decided, hey, we're going to go to Lee Summit instead. The reason being is because Raymore is actually kind of boring. There's really not much to do in Raymore. There's not a lot of shops. I think there's a Price Chopper, there's a Sam's Club, and really that's about it. There's also Creekmore Golf Course, and if you live on Creekmore Golf Course, it is an awesome place to live because it is one of the best, probably the best public golf course in Kansas City that's not completely private. I've only played Creekmore once, and it is a fantastic track. But when you live in Raymore, there's really not much else to do. You've got to kind of want to be a homebody. Maybe you should try to find something with some land, some acreage where you can spend your time out there, because a lot of people, you can see Lee Summit is super close to Raymore, and a lot of people are going to consider Lee Summit instead. So if you can find a home right about right here in Lee Summit, then I would probably say that you have so much more to do and you're so much closer to the awesome shopping and the schools in Lee Summit that a lot of people just decide to go to Lee Summit instead. Raymore has a decent school system, one of the better ones in Kansas City, and there are a lot of new houses in Raymore. However, I think if you're going to be paying anywhere from $370,000 to $400,000 and you are looking in the Kansas City metro, just to be honest with you, I think you have a lot more better options than Raymore. Now, Raymore is really well suited for somebody who's looking to retire, somebody who's looking for that slower pace of life. They just want to be on that golf course, want to be out on Creekmore, want to be on a new build, and just kind of want to slow everything down. I think Raymore is going to be a great fit for you. If that's not you, I think you're going to find Raymore particularly boring. Hey there, this is Future Jaylenn speaking about Raymore. One thing I forgot to mention when I originally recorded this video is that there is a landfill that is proposed to go right at the border of Kansas City and Raymore. A lot of the Raymore residents are super upset at this possible landfill because it is going to be a scourge on the city and the residents of the city. Currently, it is in the legislature right now, and people are trying to block it. The people who want the landfill are saying, well, our trash has to go somewhere, and the people of Raymore are saying, we absolutely do not want this landfill near our properties. So that could be another reason why, with all the speculation of whether or not this landfill is going to go into Raymore, or at least the area surrounding Raymore, That's probably why some of the property values have dropped. Okay, are you ready for area number 2? Again, this was an area that completely shocked me, and this area is Lenexa. This area may have been more shocking than Prairie Village because I can understand Prairie Village coming down from the hype of being, Zillow's best city in 2022, and a lot of people way overpaying in 2022 and 2023, and then Prairie Village coming down to its normal levels in 2024. But Lenexa is a very, very popular area in Johnson County. Johnson County, if you don't know, is the highest price point county. So Johnson County, you can see, encompasses all of this area below the river in the Kansas side. And it does encompass Prairie Village, like I told you before. It encompasses Shawnee, and here's Lenexa right here in smack dab in the middle of Johnson County. And prices here have gone down. Prices have dropped 9% from $531,000 to $481,000. Again, that's average price point of home in Lenexa, Kansas. And it kind of doesn't really make too much sense. There are incredible schools here. There are newer homes. There's new development happening there all the time. Lenexa Community Center is one of the newest in the metro, and we go there all the time, especially during the summer. One of the better pools in the Kansas City metro area. I'm going to tell you a story about one of my clients who decided to buy a home in the Johnson County area. They were looking in Lenexa, Olathe, Overland Park, or Miriam. And we saw a home that opened up in Lenexa that was $300,000. We decided to put in an offer at $330,000. At the end of all the bidding, there were 16 other offers on this home. And the bidding got up to $360,000. The home went $60,000 over the asking price. Right now in 2024, the average price point in Lenexa is $531,000. So that just shows you, though, that if you find an attractive home in a lot of these areas, they can still be bid up pretty high. So super surprised when Lenexa dropped from $531,000 to $481,000. That's the average price point. It's a drop of 9%. Now, before we get to number 1, I'm going to mention a couple of honorable, or in this case, dishonorable mentions of areas that have not dropped as much as these 7 areas on the list, but they really haven't gained very much either. Okay, the first area is the area we first moved into, which is Gladstone. The average price point of home in Gladstone was $260,000 in 2023, and it only grew to $262,000 in 2024. That's only a growth of 0.78%. Again, if you're not growing because of inflation and because of the average home in America growing 5%, you're actually staying still or going backwards a little bit. Another one is Grain Valley. Grain Valley is near Independence. On the Independence side, it's near Blue Springs. It's near Odessa. And Grain Valley, the average price point of home in Grain Valley dropped from $323,000 to $327,000. That's a 1.2% drop. And lastly, another surprising area, Olathe, the average price point of home dropped in Olathe from $447,000 to $456,000 in 2024. That's a drop of almost 2%. Again, if you're not growing, you're shrinking, but you're not shrinking as fast as the number 1 area in Kansas City to avoid buying a home in 2024, and that is Grandview, Missouri. Grandview, Missouri. It shrunk a whopping 15%. The average price point of home in Grandview was $210,000 in 2023. In the first 3 months of 2024, the average price point of Grandview homes was $178,000. So that's a 15% drop. I'm going to show you where Grandview is on a map, and I think you'll be able to know why Grandview has dropped so much. So Grandview is right here, right on the south side of Kansas City, almost outside of the metro, and it is completely surrounded. You've got Kansas City to the north, you've got Lee Summit to the east, you've got Belton and Raymore to the south, and Grandview is an area that is known for a lot of crime activity. It is also known for an area in which there is really not much to do. So if you're going to move to Grandview, you have so many good options all the way around you. I would go to Raymore if you could afford it over Grandview. I would go to Belton if you could afford it over Grandview. Belton is an area that is attractive, a lot of shopping going on down there, a lot of things going on down there, and Grandview just does not have the same thing. If you go to homes in Grandview, if you check out homes in Grandview, they're kind of old, they're kind of run down, they're a little bit dilapidated. You can still get a good home in Grandview, of course, but again, if you're not committed to Kansas City long term, I would not buy a home in Grandview. It shrunk a whopping 15% just in a year. There's really nothing to do there. So you stuck around until the very end. I'm going to share with you the one tip that I would use to buy a home in these areas if you don't want to lose money in either a year or two. And that is buy below the average price point. Again, that's buy below the average price point. Now, Lenexa was number 2 on this list, okay? And the average price point for homes in Lenexa in 2024 is $481,000. I recently took a buyer to a home in Lenexa. It was listed for $300,000. It was a small home, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, probably 1,200 square feet. Really nice, nicely maintained home on a nice lot. And we put in an offer because we knew that when we went there, it was a complete zoo. There were people all over that home. Okay, so we put in an offer at $330,000. That's $30,000 over asking price. Guess what? We did not win the home. The home went for $360,000. That's a $60,000 increase in asking price. It had 14 different offers on it, and that was in the number 2 area where you want to avoid buying a home. So my theory, my advice is this: if you are going to buy a home in this area, in any of these areas, buy below the average price point. If you find a home that is priced well, maintained well, priced below the average price point, especially a home that a first-time home buyer will buy, more than likely in any of these areas, you will not lose money. If you can find a home like that in Prairie Village, I mean, good luck. You won't lose money there. If you can find a home in Liberty like that, then you won't lose money there. Now, you may be wondering, what are the best areas to buy a home in Kansas City? Well, you're going to want to watch this video right here.